a new hat that you are wearing. So let's talk about your new hat. When are you going to go to Washington? When are you going to meet Mr. Lighthizer? And what message will you be taking to him?
Good afternoon. Well, first of all, of course, I would like to thank President of the European Commission, von der Leyen, for her trust and confidence in proposing me to take over the Trade Commissioner's portfolio. Indeed, it's a major agenda, and I'm looking forward, of course, subject to confirmation by European Parliament. Well, in any case, I think it's important that EU and US stay engaged, that we work closely together, that we strengthen our transatlantic relation, including in area of trade. So I'm looking also towards working closely together with Ambassador Lighthizer. As regards EU-US trade relations, actually exactly today, European Commission came with a proposal for another trade facilitation deal, reducing tariffs on certain goods both in EU and US side.
Now, you definitely advocate a multilateral rules-based international system, but many countries now might not, like the U.S., like China. How confident are you that you can avoid any kind of retaliation and avoid getting sucked into a U.S.-China trade spat?
Well, on this, EU has consistently advocating the approach that we need to stick with rules-based multilateral system, because at the end of the day, it's better for everyone. And we know that World Trade Organization needs reform, and European Union has been putting forward proposals on WTO reform, and we are willing to continue to work on this, advance it, also restore the work of the appellate body on WTO, because it's at the end of the day, it's going to be better than when everyone is on its own and takes a decision as it pleases. There are decisions, retaliations, and at the end of the day, global trade is suffering and global economy is suffering. So this we need to avoid.
Commissioner, do you think China plays by the rules? You talk about the need for a rules-based system. We've got a big summit coming up in a few weeks' time, in a few days' time, with the Chinese. And I'm wondering what your priorities are in terms of Europe's relationship with China. Do you think that relationship needs to change?
Well, in fact, we share many of U.S. concerns vis-à-vis China on issues like industrial subsidies, forced technology transfer, intellectual property rights. We probably not always share the method how to address the issue, but on substance, we see many of the same issues. Right now, in EU-China relations in this area, the priority is a work on investment agreement, comprehensive investment agreement. Probably we are able to finalize it already this year, even though there is still a number of substantial points which need to be clarified before it can be done. In any case, what is important is that we address also existing imbalance in EU-China economic relations, where we see that EU market is more open for trade and investment to China than China's market is to EU companies. So this is something which we are currently actively negotiating with China, also within the framework of EU-China high-level economic dialogues.
And then the third issue, obviously, you're dealing with that has to do with Brexit. Michel Barnier traveling to the UK today for some meetings. The headline yesterday was from the Financial Times that the UK government's going to change some legislation that overrides some of the key points for the agreement earlier last year. Do you take those threats seriously, or do you think this is posturing? How do you read that kind of conversation coming out of the UK?
Indeed, as it has been outlined already, it's a major concern for the EU, because we have a withdrawal agreement agreed by both sides. It's an international agreement, and it's important that both sides actually stick with what has been agreed, and withdrawal agreement forms the basis also for our future economic relationship, including free trade agreement.
How optimistic are you that we can avoid a cliff? And just kind of switching hats, if we can, for a moment, do you think European banks have done enough and are well prepared enough in terms of how we're going to approach the change in the relationship? Or do you think that more needs to happen?
First of all, indeed, EU is negotiating with an aim to reach an agreement. I think it's neither in EU's nor UK's interest that there is no agreement, and that at the end of the day, then we need to trade on the WTO terms. Well, there are clear EU approach, certain things which need to happen for us successfully to move forward. Well, on financial sector, on financial services side, on banking side, we know that there has been discussions already for a long time that we can base our future relations on the system of equivalence decisions from both sides, but those are autonomous decisions from each side, and this is something which we are currently doing. So we are doing this equivalence assessment from the EU side. Well, financial sector is very aware of this situation, and by now I would say has had also sufficient time to do all the necessary preparations for the situation when the UK will be outside EU single market.
Just switching back to the trade hat, sorry to jump around. We are going to get the ruling from the WTO very shortly on Boeing Airbus. We've already kind of had the Boeing side, and the White House has used that ruling to slap a series of tariffs on European goods. Do you think Europe is going to have to do the same thing when we get the Airbus side of the ruling in order to ultimately reach a compromise in what has been a very, very, very long dispute?
We will, if we will have to, but our preference would be to have an agreement with US in between, where they also withdraw their tariffs, which they had been introducing following the WTO ruling in the Airbus case, and that we, instead of kind of putting tariffs from the US on Airbus and from us on Boeing, that we actually withdraw those tariffs, and that we discuss jointly how we can ensure those subsidies discipline in the area of civil aviation, not only for a future EU-US relations, but also with a view of other competitors which may emerge in this area of civil aviation.
And last question, Valdis, to sort of broaden it out, when you talk to many investors, they always highlight that 750 billion euro recovery fund from the European Commission as why they're bullish on Europe. What are the chances, though, that it sails through? I mean, Hungary seems to be holding it up a little bit. How confident are you that it's going to pass? At European Commission, we are quite confident that it's going to pass because it gets unanimous backing of all EU member states. They reached a deal in July. It's very much needed for EU economy because it will give us a financial firepower of 1.82 trillion euros for the next 7 years. So it's much needed. We are currently in a process of negotiations with European Parliament, and we are confident that we can draw it to the successful conclusion. The aim is to be able to start drawing on those funds as soon as possible, already as of beginning of the next year.